Hey everybody, Coldon here with another VOX Immortalis commentary guide. This video is for heroic Cho'gall in Bastion of Twilight, and this is 10 man. So the heroic version of this fight has a few difficulties, and the primary one that we found was actually the DPS requirement. So this is definitely an execution fight, and when we were first learning the fight, as we were practicing, we weren't anywhere near beating the Berserk timer. So we had to make a number of tiny tweaks to our strategy and just eke out any little bit of DPS that we could get. And so you kind of see the finalized strategy here that eventually gave us a kill. So some of the changes for heroic, probably the biggest one is that there's a new add type in the first phase, the majority of the fight, from the elemental spawns that Cho'gall will summon. So just like on normal, every 25 seconds or so he'll summon a fire elemental or shadow elemental to his side, and after a few seconds he will absorb that elemental and gain a buff, either Flaming Destruction, which increases the damage on the tank, or the Unleashed Shadows for raid-wide shadow damage. However, on a heroic, the elementals that spawn are attackable. So if you look on the left here, you should spawn a fire elemental pretty soon. There it is. And this actually is attackable and targetable. So when Cho'gall absorbs one of the elementals in heroic, he can gain a stacking buff. And this buff stacks up to 10 times at max. And it will increase the damage that is dealt by the Flaming Destruction or Unleashed Shadows AE, depending on the stack count. So the percentage is 5% per stack for the fire buff, Flaming Destruction, and 10% per stack for the Shadow AE. So the way the stack is determined is based on the percentage of health that the elemental has when Cho'gall absorbs it. So if you don't attack the elemental at all and he absorbs a full health, he'll gain 10 stacks, increasing the damage of the next ability by the max amount. If you basically kill or nearly kill an elemental, since you can't actually outright kill him, and he absorbs it, he doesn't get any stacks. So it's a very linear progression from there. That said, we found that it was most of the time the best choice to completely destroy the elemental whenever possible. And there are a few situations where you may choose to ignore it, and you can use cooldowns to get through the damage, but it's up to you. For the most part, we killed every one of them. It's also a good time to mention that our raid makeup in this kill is very heavy with melee DPS. We have Feral Druid, myself, a Fury Warrior, Frost Death Knight, Enhancement Shaman, and then our ranged DPS is Balance Druid, Arcane Mage, and Destruction Lock. So obviously we're a little heavier on melee than is ideal. So because of that, we basically have our 3 ranged DPS assigned to killing the elementals that spawn most of the time. The one exception to this is after an adherent dies and Cho'gall festers blood, spawning the slime adds. Since ranged have to focus on those, during this portion, melee DPS actually kill any elementals that spawn or have been active. But that's really the only time. So this allows the melee to not run around very much for elementals and focus on Cho'gall or the adherent. So you can see here I am tanking the adherents. Obviously Feral has a pretty strong advantage in this, simply because when you're not tanking in bear form, you can go cat and do pretty reasonable DPS. And in fact, I have all the tanking talents in my talent spec, and then as many as the DPS talents as possible, which is most of them. And then my gear and glyphs are all DPS based. I don't have any reforging for avoidance or anything like that. So it's all DPS gear. And this is completely adequate to tank adherence in this fight, as you see. As a druid, you can use your bark skin every time an adherent spawns, and then you can rotate your big cooldowns one after the other, so it's really not that much damage. So this basically gives our raid DPS a boost of around 9,000 or 10,000 or so, depending on your ability. But that's really handy, trying to beat the Berserk. So I should mention the tanking position. You can see here we're kind of grouped up by the throne here against the wall. And this is because we tried some other locations, but we were having trouble with the slime spawns not being grouped enough. And if you've seen our normal video, you may remember that we keep Cho'gall in the center in that fight on normal. But we found if we tank the adherents at the center of the cubby here, for the most part, and put Cho'gall on top of them, then this allows most of our cleave damage to hit Cho'gall while we're attacking the adherent. And with so much melee damage, as I mentioned, that's really useful. So once the adherent's low, then I pull him back to the next location that he should die. So the first one goes in the back left corner, which is to my left right now. And the next one is the front left corner. And then this third one is back center, as you see. And then the fourth one will be right where I am now. So the idea is to get them as far against the walls of that cubby as possible. And then we have the raid all stack up toward the throne when the slimes are spawning. And what this does is it forces the slimes to go around that edge of the wall and sort of funnels them automatically for us so that they'll be forced to go through our snares. We don't have very many snares in this raid. We only have the mushrooms from our Balance Druid and Earthbind Totem. So it was really crucial that we had a way to sort of control where the ads are grouped up. I should mention, if you do a similar strategy as far as timing, and specifically if you pull Cho'gall to where the adherent is, then he's always going to spawn an elemental pretty much right before the Blood of the Old God spawn. So depending on the position, that can mean the elemental spawns in a puddle and melee are not able to attack it without getting corruption. So make sure your ranged DPS are watching for that spawn and do as much damage as possible before the slime ads appear. If you don't have enough ranged DPS and they have to switch off the elemental, that's fine. Just make sure you plan ahead with cooldowns and whatnot. So the last thing probably worth mentioning is Fury of the Cho'gall. Just like our normal strategy, rather than use 2 full tanks, we're having a non-tank taunt Cho'gall for the Fury and absorb it so that it doesn't apply to our main tank. And this again just helps to increase your DPS for the raid because you can sort of get away with fewer tanks. So our Death Knight is taunting Cho'gall for most of the Furies, and he does a really good job. And this is because he can use AMS to absorb the damage from the spell portion of it. But every once in a while he'll call for our Warrior DPS to taunt the next one so that the Death Knight can reset his stack. So that's pretty important. But again, this keeps the Fury buff off the main tank and off of the adherent tank, myself, so that helps a lot. And the final, I think I've mentioned everything in this first phase, oh, except interrupts, actually. So on normal, when you fail to interrupt someone quickly enough and Cho'gall gains that stacking buff, it's only 15-second duration. So it will run out before the next charm goes out. But on Heroic, the buff lasts 60 seconds, meaning if you don't interrupt quickly enough and he gets some buffs, then you have to interrupt the next 2 charms immediately or the stack will continue to climb. So that can be really dangerous given that everything is just doing so much more damage on Heroic, especially things like the Shadow AE or the Flaming Destruction on the tank. Also, regarding Flaming Destruction, for the most part, our Paladin tank on Cho'gall is using a cooldown every time he can for Flaming Destruction, including the Mirror Broken Images, which is really good for that. So that's really quite dangerous, especially if you're using 2 healers like we are here. Again, we have to use 2 healers because the damage requirement is so high. So this final spawn, the goal of our DPS tweaks was to not have to kill his 5th adherent, which we were able to do here, and be able to push into the phase. I should mention that actually I'll cover this last phase. There's one additional spawn type in this final phase, which is a large tentacle. It doesn't spawn as often as the small ones, but it will try to melee anyone that's closest target to it with pretty heavy physical damage. However, you can simply step away from it about 10 or 15 yards and it won't hit anyone. Otherwise, this is the same as normal, but since the fight lasts a lot longer in this phase, the corruption stack is going to get a lot higher. And our raid did a really great job of avoiding corruption. No one had any corruption going into this final phase, but you can still see at the right there, it's climbing pretty quickly. So your healers need to be ready to dispel when people reach that 25 corruption marker. And of course, people need to face away if they hit 50. But by that time, you should be able to burn them down. So the rest of this phase is pretty much the same. So I'll just briefly mention there's another strategy that we tried for a while that's pretty popular, and that's to utilize 100 corruption generally on a fire mage. By getting them into 100 corruption, they get instant casts, so they can just spam Pyroblast for a great amount of damage. However, they cannot be healed. Healing is reduced by 100%. So what this means is that the damage from the Unleashed Shadows AE throughout the first phase has to be mitigated in some way so that the mage survives. So a lot of people will set up cooldowns, rotations, and like Spirit Link Totem, things like that. But we found it's really difficult without Discipline Priest bubbles. Those just would make all the difference for doing that strategy. So in the end, we just decided that tweaking all our DPS that we could without trying to use this mage strat made it more stable, I guess. So to actually kill Cho'gall, you don't have to get him down to 0 health. He will transition and do a little animation toward the center of the room at around 2.5% or so. So once he starts to transition, like right there, then as long as someone in the raid survives before he falls over, then you'll win. So that's it. Rogue Cho'gall. Good luck and thanks for watching.
Rest your head now, little girl. You're on your way now. Open your mind up to the sky, yeah, and fly away now. Oh, you got nothing to prove. You got no one to hurt you. You got no one to pull you down, push you around, make you frown and cry. You are alone now. Hey. Oh, waking up every day with the beam of the moonlight in my eyes. Cemented my consciousness with the focus of my mind. I've got to dig myself back to the beginning of eternity, breaking free. Knowing that my body is motionless and still asleep. I am waking up every day with the beam of the moonlight in my eyes. Cemented my consciousness with the focus of my mind. I've got to dig myself back to the beginning of eternity, breaking free. So fly with me. There's a whole sky to see. I'm taking your mind with me into lucidity, flying in unity. Could be normality. What you perceive to be is your reality. Of our minds, our own in cities where the country streets unwind. Well, in the center of this world, you have your center of gravity. Oh, now just lay your head and put your eyes at ease. Create your life and the world that you perceive. Well, in the center of this world, you have your own imaginary planetary universe. Oh, so fly with me. There's a whole sky to see. I'm taking your mind with me into lucidity, flying in unity. Could be normality. What you perceive to be is your reality. Waking up every day with the beam of the moonlight in my eye. Submitted my consciousness with the focus of my mind. I've got to dig myself back to the feeling of totally breaking free. Knowing that my body is motionless and still asleep. I am waking up every day with the beam of the moonlight in my eye. Submitted my consciousness with the focus of my mind. I've got to dig myself back to the feeling of eternally breaking free. Rest your head now, little girl. You're on your way now. Open your mind up to the sky. Yeah, and fly away now. Oh, you got nothing to prove. You got no one to hurt you. Got no one to pull you down, push you around, make you frown and cry. You are alone now. Hey, oh, so fly with me. There's a whole sky to see. I'm taking your mind with me into lucidity, flying in unity. Could be normality. What you perceive to be is your reality. Fly with me. There's a whole sky to see. I'm taking your mind with me into lucidity, flying in unity. Could be normality. What you perceive to be is your reality. Rest your head now, little girl. 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 De bamboo da do ba do bamboo de bamboo da do ba do bamboo de bamboo da do ba do ba de bamboo da do ba do bamboo de. So you got me loving you, girl. So you got me loving you, girl. So many many miles to see your face. I've got a feeling I can't change, and I don't want to sound cliche, but my heart aches. Now I'm living inside your dreams. So if you find it hard to sleep, and if you're feeling lonely, oh, just call me. You know my voice can soothe your pain. You know my voice can soothe your pain. You know my voice can soothe your pain. Yes, you know my voice can soothe your pain. You know my voice can soothe your. Inside my pillow I see your face, a recent memory I can't erase, and I don't want to sound passe, but I need your taste. Now I'm living inside your dreams. Your silhouette is enough for me. So if you're feeling the same way, oh, just call me. You know my voice can soothe your pain. You know my voice can soothe your pain. You know my voice can soothe your pain. Yes, you know my voice can soothe your pain. Yes, you know my voice can soothe your soul. You got me loving you, girl. So, you got me loving you. So, you got me loving you, girl. So, you got me loving you. I just need the touch of your eyes that I miss so much. Your smile is all I need to survive this loneliness inside. Oh, don't you worry about a thing now. Temptation might be all around me, but it's not the same. So if you're lonely, you know my voice can soothe your pain. You know my voice can soothe your pain. You know my voice can soothe your pain. Yes, you know my voice can soothe your pain. Yes, you know my voice can soothe your pain. You know my voice can soothe your pain. You know my voice can soothe your pain. Yes, you know my voice can soothe your pain. Yes, you know my voice can soothe your pain. Your pain, you know my voice can soothe your pain. You know my voice can soothe your pain. Yes, you know my voice can soothe your pain.